Road Warrior can stand on its own. You don't need the first one.
It's interesting. This was an episode I thought was going to go really smooth. I didn't anticipate the
I had
box
a
office
feeling.
beef. Welcome to the Old Brother Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Smith. Alongside me, as always, my brother from the same mother, Mike Smith.
How's it going, Dan?
Good. Wow, that was a real Mike Smith. Like I was really...
Yeah, you really punched my name there.
Really did, yeah.
Like you were angry.
So this has become almost its own segment in the podcast, which is checking out a classic film that most of the world has probably seen, but I haven't seen. And it's topical, of course, because we've got a sort of spin-off film that's just about to come out in theaters related to this film that we're going to talk about today. So without further ado, Mike, we're going to talk about Mad Max, the original Mad Max, right?
And as we get into it, what you just said about most people having already seen this isn't necessarily true. And I'll get into that as we talk.
Here we go, folks.
No,
already poking holes in a film. A film that set a Guinness record at the time that it was out.
Okay, for what?
Wait. Going to educate Mike a little bit on this episode.
I need some education.
Before we get into the breaking down the film, though, I do want to say by the time you're watching this, just shortly after this episode comes out, we're going to be celebrating, Mike, our 5th year on the podcast. Well, 4th year, I guess, because it would be 2024. So
right.
I can't do the math. You know what's weird? Why have I been saying 5 years?
I don't know.
What's in this cup exactly?
Exactly. I saw a little string hanging from it, but
no, that was the other one. That's the 16 ounce.
Okay.
No, that's funny. I just realized I completely I've never, been guilty of being good at math, but so anyways, coming up on the 4th year, how is that possible, Mike? May 29th, 2020.
Well, there's thousands and thousands of subscribers. Just says it all.
Yeah, it seems like it's been a lot longer, but yeah, to reach those milestones, it was only taking us 4 years.
I do want to say a shout out to our new interns. We didn't do it on the last episode. And I just wanted to shout out Susan, Steve, and Kevin.
Okay,
welcome aboard.
Now Mad Max is a you could almost call it I wouldn't call it a superhero film, but I wanted to say that just because you didn't notice that I am.
Oh, you got the Superman out finally.
I finally get the Superman out. Yeah,
the second best Superman.
The Superman. Yeah. It's a little bit of a fuck you to James Gunn, I suppose, if you want to look at it that way. So, all right. So anyway, so for those of you that aren't following us, make sure that you do go out to the YouTube channel, subscribe, like the videos. We'd appreciate the support out there. Appreciate everybody that's been following us and tuning in and listening, watching, whatever you're doing, however you're consuming the show. We appreciate that. And yeah, shout out to the production assistants because we couldn't do this without them. Well, we could, but it would be very painful for me.
It would be one episode every 2 months.
Yeah, it'd be brutal for me. So as I said at the top, this is a film that I've seen little tiny bits of over the years, and that's it. I've never sat and watched this from start to finish. So I was definitely excited to jump into it, and I loved it. It's a classic. Clearly, it's a classic. Now, I didn't realize, so it came out actually in 1979 in Australia,
right?
In April, right? And then we got the release in March of the fall.
And do you know what it did in the box office?
In Australia?
No. Domestically?
Yes, I do.
Overall?
Yes.
Okay.
A little less than 9 million.
Look again at the box office mojo.
What? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. You're talking about the US?
Yeah.
It's like 267 million, I think, is what it equates to. If you do the Australian currency.
Well, box office mojo, and I'm not surprised, has it at 9,000,
No,
not
that's
9,000,000.
you're confused with the Australian currency because this set a Guinness record at the time for budget to box office because of the budget
I
that
think
this
you're
the
thinking of 2.
No, I'm not. I'm not. You got your math wrong. You get your
No,
math wrong.
I
You do.
I'm
You
me
do. You
unlike
do.
you, I am a
No, you
very
do.
good math student.
But you're not a good student of box office receipts apparently. So and I can see
Because
here.
it
So
was barely released.
if you look at IMDb, okay, uh, this is gross worldwide like 8.7 million. All right, on a budget of 300,000, but that's Australia. That's not the U.S. equivalent. So let's pause while Mike looks up the box office mojo
Okay. Which
because
okay, it is 8,000,000, but that's it.
correct, but that's not it's not in the right currency. Because it was
It
released in
doesn't
Australia. That's what that's going based on.
I know, it barely
How
got
how
released
how
here.
could it set how could it set a Guinness record? In fact,
I
it held the
think you're
record.
thinking of 2.
I'm not thinking of 2. It held the record until Blair Witch came in to be.
I think you're
So
thinking of 2.
look up 2 on Box Office Mojo.
I will.
Well, this
And
was a
you'll
what
see the
this
number.
interesting. This was an episode I thought was gonna go really smooth. I didn't
I
anticipate
I
the
had a
box office
feeling.
beef. It's
No, I
it's
had
a
a feeling this was gonna that's why
it's a box office throwdown, folks.
when we were deciding what to do this week, and we
Yeah.
wanted to do Mad Max
Yep.
because the new one's coming out this weekend.
Mhm.
As people watch this, well, if
Right.
you watch it when it comes out, it's coming out this weekend. But
Right. Right.
here are the receipts for Mad Max 2. 23,000,000.
Uh-huh.
Now,
Yeah.
it eventually went over 100,000,000 worldwide.
Right.
But
So let's see
I'm gonna
here,
take the opposite tact of you.
which is what?
This is my least favorite Mad Max. I know there's huge Mad Max followers,
Right.
but most of them watched The Road Warrior first because the box office release was so poor, they pulled Mad Max within the first week and said, "You know what? This isn't gonna sell." But
Mhm.
then Mad Max 2, which was really successful and had a big following, did really well. That's when the release of Mad Max came out on Blu-ray or DVD.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, most people, I think, when they think of the first Mad Max, they're thinking of Road Warrior because a lot of
Yeah.
people didn't see Mad unless you have the box set,
I
you know,
don't
this
I think I don't know that that's a fair statement. I don't know how you can
I
make that. You're pulling that out of your ass. But
no, I'm
let me
not.
read this. Let me read this quick on from this actually on Wikipedia. It says
The source that anyone can
the
add
film
to.
starring the then little known Mel Gibson was released internationally in 1980. It became a top grossing Australian film while holding the record in the Guinness Book of Records for decades as the most profitable film ever created, and has been credited for further opening the global market to Australian new wave films, et cetera, et cetera. So again, the only thing I was talking about was budget to box office. That's it. I'm not
Right,
saying, oh, it was more successful than 2. And most people regard 2 as one of the best action films ever made.
right, and
But
as I rewatch this, because I've seen this several
Mhm.
times,
Right.
and as I rewatched it, and you realize Mel Gibson is probably in half of it, maybe,
Yeah,
right?
probably. Yeah.
But then when you watch 2,
Mhm.
everything is geared up. They did some stunts. Now, granted, there was some stunts in 1 that were pretty pretty
Oh,
good.
there was lots of stunts
The
in
car
1.
crashes.
I
I
mean,
mean, this is real stuff. This isn't,
correct, which is one of the things I love about the film is that, and I've seen 2. I started to watch Thunderdome even though I know it's a total dog, but I
it's not
gotta
as
be I gotta be a completist and see it,
it's not as horrible
It's pretty bad.
as its reputation.
Right out of the gate with the long hair, the whole thing is just weird. But that's true of all of these films, quite frankly. It's everything
Yeah.
about it is bizarre, but um
Have you seen Fury Road yet?
yeah, I saw Fury Road a
Oh,
while
okay,
ago. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
okay.
I already seen that.
Because that is epic,
Mhm.
you know?
I lost my train of thought because you were talking about the action in the second film, and
Right.
then I forget
But then I said there's a lot of action in the first film. You
right.
commented, "Oh, yeah,
Oh,
there's
we
a
were
lot of
talking
action."
about the practical effects, right? The fact that
Correct,
this isn't a time when you've got all this visual effects stuff going on. So
correct.
that just led to the authenticity of the film, I thought. So I love that. And the things that these not even a lot of stunt people. It was a lot of like
Yes.
regular people
I
doing
mean,
these
they're
things, right?
throwing
Regular
people
riders.
they were doing things never done before, like a guy gets, crashes, flies out of the vehicle, goes like 60 yards,
Right, right.
and there was no net.
Right, and they were doing yeah, there was one, there's a great scene where, one of the chases and there's a couple of bikes that spill, and one of the motorcycle riders slides across the bridge, and then he takes a motorcycle tire in the head,
Right to the head.
right to the head. That wasn't scripted, folks. It's
No.
just, just shit that happened on this
Right.
crazy
Right.
filmmaking. It was pretty wild, but um yeah, George Miller, of course, the director, and he's directed
Mhm.
all of them, I think, right?
He
He's directed
has.
every one of them.
Yes. And
Uh
and he has an Academy Award for
Happy
Happy
Feet.
Feet.
Yeah. I was gonna
I
say to you,
mean,
does George Miller have an Academy Award? And yeah, Happy
yeah,
Feet, which
and
is
he has
weird.
such an eclectic
He really does, yeah.
resume.
Well,
I mean,
which begins before he was even a filmmaker. Talk
right,
about his very beginning. What
right.
was his vocation before he got into
Oh
filmmaking?
god, I read it and
He was a
forget.
doctor.
That's right.
He
He
was
went
a
to
doctor.
medical school, and while he was in medical school, he talked to his brothers,
Mhm.
right? He has 2 brothers, and they were
Right.
like, "Let's try
And
to
I
make a
think
movie."
I think that's where he met his producing partner, Byron Kennedy,
Byron
was
Kennedy.
they were pulling shifts as, young doctors, whatever, they
Yeah,
were on rotation in the ER.
and he died.
He died very young, I
Yeah,
believe,
did he
like
make it
30
to the
something?
release?
Oh, I
Or
think so.
okay, I wasn't
I
sure
think so.
because you see in the beginning, it says a
Mhm.
Kennedy Miller production.
Correct,
So for
correct.
people who wonder, like, even I was like, was Kennedy his middle name? I
Yeah,
didn't realize he had a
so
partner.
Byron Kennedy died in July of 1983.
Okay, so he
Yeah,
made it
so
for the first 2.
that's right. He was only 33, which is
Wow.
very, very young, yeah.
And a
Um,
doctor to boot.
yeah, but they had met, at the University of Melbourne because, of course, this first one was all filmed in and around Australia.
Yes.
Now the one that I watched digitally, the 4K first of all, it's
Yeah.
great. It's
Yes.
great.
Yes.
No extras, so that was always
I
disappointing,
know, what did this
you
and
know?
you know what? If you watch the second one and you
Uh-huh.
go to the extras, there's an intro by Leonard Maltin.
Oh,
That it's very short.
yeah.
He's a
One of the
critic
one
or
of the
was a
greats.
critic,
Yeah.
and it's very short, but it literally saves you from watching the first film. It shows
Mhm.
all the highlights,
Right.
and I felt like, you know what? This Mad Max is really a backstory of how this Australian cop became this kind of nomad.
Mhm. Well, he doesn't really become Mad Max until, like, an hour and 15 minutes into the film, which,
It's way into it.
spoiler alert, his wife and kid get mowed down by toe cutters,
Yeah.
band
Toady.
of yeah, toe cutter, right?
Right.
So let me go back to some of the the details there. Like we, of course, talked about George Miller, director, screenplay by James McCausland, who actually has a brief cameo in the film. There's a scene where um, Goose, um, Jim Goose, Max's
Right.
partner on the
Right.
MFP, the Maine Force Police.
Yes.
He's at a diner having breakfast or whatever, and they get a call to chase these criminals, and he runs out, and there's like a cook with an apron on or something that walks out of the diner, and it's James McCausland, the
Yeah.
screenwriter. It's kind of
I
funny.
didn't know that.
Which was, what was interesting about it? He had not written a screenplay before, and but he was a journalist,
Mhm.
which Miller had learned early on, something about journalists, and I forget what the inspiration was, to think that McCausland as a journalist might make a good script, screenwriter. So, anyways, but
A lot.
McCausland says they were influenced by the oil crisis in '73 in Australia, which made me think about the gas crisis in 1979,
Right.
which, of course, our father owned a mobile station,
Right.
and I can remember the lines of cars,
Mhm.
and you were working there at the time.
Yeah, now, was that 79? I thought it was earlier than
There was
that.
a couple of different. I think there was maybe in '77 or something, but '79 was like the main one
But
that I remember.
I was working at the station at the time, and we
Right.
would open the gas pumps an hour a day, and we would run out of
And
gas.
you had signs, like, on the sidewalk to because
We
it
had
went
to
all the way down the block,
it went all there's like a church a mile down, and
all the
they
way down,
were past the church,
all the way down, yeah, yeah.
and we had to park our vehicles to block the
Mhm.
pumps because people would go around and they would try to get to the pumps,
Right.
and it was unbelievable, and of course, dad's, least favorite people would show up. "Hey, Joe, how are you? Good to see you.
Can I
Can
get
I
a
fill up?"
Can I
Yeah.
get some petrol? Well, and I took a snapshot of this. I think this was on Wikipedia when you read through the
Mhm.
production of the film, but I just thought this was really striking, where it says a couple of oil strikes that hit many pumps revealed the ferocity with which Australians would defend their right to fill a tank. And then it says, and I highlighted this, George and I being James McCausland, the screenwriter,
Mhm.
wrote the script based on the thesis that people would do almost anything to keep vehicles moving, and based on the assumption that nations would not consider the huge costs of providing infrastructure for alternative energy until it was too late.
Yeah.
I thought, wow, that was a lot of foresight
Right.
that they
I mean,
had at
look
the
at today.
time.
What are people paying for gas? $4?
Oh, yeah. Well, on the East Coast, certainly. On the West Coast, I don't even wanna know what they're paying out there because it's
Yeah.
usually worse.
Yes.
So, yeah, it was striking because I thought, "Geez, we went through that,
Mhm.
not long after this." So that was an inspiration for it. The
In
cast, of
fact,
course. Go ahead.
Jimmy Carter was president at the time,
Mhm.
and it likely cost him. He was a really dull president, I gotta admit,
That was
but
just before Reagan was
yeah, and
was
Reagan
elected,
came in, with
1980.
this, and we were almost, in fact, the draft came back. I was in, high school, and that I
Yeah.
had to register for the draft,
Mhm.
which had been obsolete for many years,
Yeah.
and Reagan brought it in, and we all thought we were going to Russia. We thought for
Mhm.
sure we were going to war.
Right, that was like Gorbachev and all that at the time, I think, right?
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
Reagan came in, and there was the hostage, but we're getting way off track.
Yeah, yeah, we'll get way off track. So let me just run down the main cast. So of course Mel Gibson is Max
Mhm,
Rockatansky, or the Interceptor, if you so are inclined. Joanne Samuel plays Jessie, his wife, girlfriend,
mhm.
uh, and then Hugh Keys Byrne, of course, plays Toe Cutter, who also plays. Did you know he's also in Fury Road?
I'm not surprised. I know there were some people
He
like
plays. Well, he's not just anybody. He's like the main character, and
Right, the
Morton Joe.
guy in the tower.
Yeah, with the weird
Right,
getup. Yeah,
yes,
so that's Hugh Keys Byrne, which is incredible, like 30 years later that he's
right,
fronting that film too. Steve Bisley, plays Jim Goose, I mentioned. Tim Burns as Johnny the Boy, who has a pretty significant role in the film.
mhm,
And Roger Ward, who I loved, who played Fifi, who was like the
right.
head of the MFP. This guy was like a big lumberjack of a dude too. Oh
Oh,
my
he's a
god,
big
this is a
guy.
big beefy guy.
Yeah,
Um, we talked about the budget already, and we talked about uh, the release dates and all that sort of stuff. So you're not really. Do you not like the film, or it's just not of the franchise? It's not your favorite.
it's not my favorite. In fact, I'd rather watch Beyond Thunderdome than
Mm.
rewatch this.
No fucking way is that true. And I guarantee, I can't imagine anybody out there is going to agree with you. If they do, I'd love to hear that because having not even seen all of Thunderdome yet,
Right.
I gotta believe that's not true. Why?
Well,
Why are you shitting on
you
that,
know who
the
says it
original?
better than me is the late Roger Ebert,
Mhm.
who
You
gave
mean
Thunderdome a very positive review,
mm,
as he did all 4 or all 3. He wasn't around
mhm,
for Fury Road, but
mhm, yeah,
I'm sure he would have loved that. But they both, Siskel and Ebert, who people don't know or remember anymore, but for generations, they were the premier movie critics
mhm,
in the country, if not the world. Um, they love this franchise, the first 3,
yeah,
and it's sad that they didn't get the chance to see an even better version with Fury Road, which is considered by many to be a perfect movie. I think I
mhm,
mentioned that before when
mhm.
we did a Furiosa first
First look,
look.
yeah.
But
S
my big thing is at the beginning of 2, we
Mhm,
get a recap that basically covers every major point. Now you don't get the chases and the good stuff, but you get the story. And Road Warrior can stand on its own. You don't need the first one. Give me that little recap about this cop that's gone rogue and lost his family, his wife and kid,
mm.
and I'm off and running. And the
Yeah,
stunts are
you
way for 80, what was it, 81 or 82?
yeah, yeah,
The
yeah, it was
stunts,
81.
they rolled a tanker, an
Right.
oil tanker.
Yeah, but again, I almost think they were equal in that. I don't think there was that much more stunt work going on in the second one than the
I
first one.
I thought, like, the first one to me is very slow
I
out
mean,
of the
the
gate,
the directing is unreal. Like with the car chases,
and
the
those
the
narrow
the
shots.
narrow shots, the speed, and David, I think David Egby, I think was the director of photography. Like he would get on the back of some of these Kawasaki motorcycles
Yeah,
and get some of the most unbelievable shots.
yeah,
But it just looked crazy as hell. Like the whole opening sequence, towards the beginning with the chase with Knight Rider, that character who was totally off his rocker, played
right.
by Vincent Gill. You know what was interesting about that too? I'm sure you didn't pick up on this. This may just be a huge coincidence, but I had to point this out because you'll appreciate this with that character, Knight Rider. So as he and his girlfriend are in a
Oh,
stolen
I know
MF.
what you're gonna say.
Do you? Okay.
Bruce
They're in an
Springsteen related, right?
yes.
Yep,
They're in an MFP uh cop car, which is these awesome Ford Falcons that they souped up, that just cool ass looking car. And he's yelling all this crazy shit, non sequiturs, whatever, just like nonsense. And at one point, though, he's like, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a fuel injected suicide machine,
right.
right out of Born
Right
to
out of
Run,
Born to Run.
which of course came out in 75.
Correct.
So I'm like, well, that has to be a reference to
It
Bruce,
it it has to be. I
right?
thought the
And
same thing.
not only that, the one of the very opening shots there's a pan. Miller kind of pans across the road, and at first you see a highway sign.
Mhm.
It's fucking says Highway 9,
Yeah.
which is right. So I'm like, "Well, okay, a little tip of that," which leads me to this point. I want to get your take on this because clearly this film influenced a number of films that would come after it. There's no
Mhm.
doubt about it in the style and the look and all of that.
Mhm.
Um, Terminator, for example,
Right.
which came out in like 84,
Right.
had to take some influence from this
Oh,
film.
definitely. No question.
RoboCop, I thought about, had to
Yeah.
take some influence. So a lot of those.
It's not as sci-fi-ish. It does
Mhm.
take place in the near future of
I love that,
Australia.
right, in the near future, this
Yeah.
kinda dystopia that they're
Right.
painting.
And I would think, I would consider Fury Road much more of a sci-fi film,
Mhm.
sci-fi action film.
Yeah. What was with the I don't get it because, okay, these were all just regular people at
Yeah.
one point, right? And then society starts to collapse, and then
Right.
the war for the resource of fuel, and there's
Right.
ecocide going on, they're polluting the environment and everything. What's with the odd names? Like, why not? How do you get like mud guts and toe cutter and Kundalini?
Yeah.
It's like, what happened to wasn't that he Tom yesterday or Bill? Like,
Was
I thought there
Gyro
was a weird Gyro
was
is
he
in
in the
two.
first or second? Okay.
He's the helicopter.
Yeah, he's
The
flying he's pedaling this,
Yeah. What are those called? The
propeller.
light something light. Those open air
Yeah.
helicopter type, whatever the hell it is. Yeah, those are crazy. He's in Thunderdome too.
Yes. Yes.
Jedediah the pilot he plays.
I think and then there's a couple of other people that are in the movie as different characters.
Yeah, why did I think he was Max von Sydow at one point?
Really?
I couldn't tell with the goggles and the whole get. And then,
He's
when
got
he
that look,
lost, yeah, when he took the all that off, I'm like, okay, that's not even
and for
close.
people who don't know him, he was the priest in Exorcist.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Uh Now, the genre,
Mhm.
um I don't know what you call it. I mean, there's this whole, I guess, new wave Australia thing that was going on, or it's kind of in some spots, it's a horror movie to me,
Yeah.
right? It's very graphic
It's
and
dark.
it's dark. I mean, there's and there's like
Right.
mutilation and
Right.
some
Right.
really intense stuff in 1979.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
And again, this didn't really hit the theaters in '79. I mean, I
right?
didn't see this in the theater.
Yeah.
I did see Road Warrior in the
Mm.
theater,
Okay.
but, and maybe that's part of the impact because
Sure.
that had such an impact on the big screen.
Well, and think of it for me, this is the first time I'm seeing Mad Max, so
Right.
it's hard for you to go back and imagine
Right.
what would that
Exactly.
experience be like. So for me, it was very thrilling, and I think I started to talk about the 4K digital transfer that I have,
Mhm.
and
Where'd
I'm
you get
pretty
that?
well, yeah, well, like, you gave me the whole, like, series
Yeah,
or something,
because I bought the box.
which is a nice box.
Yes.
It's not the dubbed one. It's not the
No.
dubbed version.
No. No,
So,
that's pretty much dead. That was the original Blu-ray release.
don't you have, yeah, you have that,
I
right?
think I have it.
You have both
Yes.
versions, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, which I
And it
was
was
glad
really
for that.
stupid.
Mhm.
I mean, it was really
I
foolish.
was thinking of, some of the dialogue though, some of the words and things like, skag,
Right.
and I started thinking Pete, Townsend,
Right,
right?
right.
Running lime and skag, and all
Yes.
these different, like, it's just funny, the English kind of Australian stuff that was going on. I don't know if you knew, I'm sure you've seen because of the behind the scenes and stuff, the motorcycles we were talking about and all the action and the stunts and the crazy
Mhm.
things they were doing with these bikes. There were like 10 Kawasaki motorcycles they got from Kawasaki.
Yeah.
Now, unbeknownst to them, Kawasaki wanted these bikes back. It was kind of almost like a cross branding sort of, they're going to promote Kawasaki and they
Right.
lend them the bikes. Little did they know, and I've heard both, like, that they gave 3 back and the rest were trashed. I've also heard they were all wrecked,
I
but
can't imagine any of them survived.
and little details too, right? With things like that. Like the MFP bikes were silver,
Mhm.
right? Like knights, and
Right.
the bad guys were like black and the cars were black, and
It was
little details
interesting
like that
because
were cool.
the cops had, like, this yellow-red color
They sure
to
did,
them,
yeah. Yeah.
but when Max goes on his own, he gets I always think of it as a Nova. It reminds yeah, that's the cop car.
That picture was
Dan's holding
taken
a picture up.
somewhere in Boston, Massachusetts.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But Max's car has got the
Mhm.
big, the engine.
He's got the supercharger, the
Exactly.
scoop, and yeah, it's
That was
pretty.
and really, the second movie opens with him, driving that,
Yes.
and
It
and
it
it just doesn't let up.
it made me, long for the days when that was kind of all there was, right? It was all about the muscle cars and how
Yeah,
big your engine was. Like, these things got like 350 horsepower plus, V8s, it's
right,
just all the
right.
stuff that, dad was working on back in the day. It was I talked about the gore, and it was very graphic at
Mhm.
times. Every time somebody in the original anyways would, or in the first film, would just about meet their demise, what was with the bulging eyes?
Yeah,
They're so
yeah,
creepy.
right.
This was one of the best uses of stunt or dummies.
Mhm.
When somebody would get, like, run over by a car or truck, usually
Yeah,
it's like that flopping dummy that they use,
right.
it was actually pretty well done, I have to say, on
It's
such a low
funny,
budget.
I was watching an old noir movie last night, and they had a fight scene, and
Mm,
there's an actor, Dan Daria, he was famous back in the 30s and 40s.
yeah.
They're doing this fist fight, and it was so pathetic that, when they would throw a punch, it was such a you know, it
Was it
was a
like a
totally different person.
Oh,
Like, all of a
okay.
sudden, he would gain 30 pounds as he took the hit.
I thought you were gonna say Sonny Corleone where he misses, he's out with the on the
Oh,
street, he's
right.
punching. Remember
No,
that?
it wasn't that, it was the fact that, they would obviously put in a stunt actor, where
Yeah,
here, you knew it was these guys, like you said, that one guy sliding down the highway
right.
and, the wheel whacking him in the head.
I really enjoyed it. I'm not saying it's, I enjoyed the second one too quite a bit.
Yeah. The
Um,
second one to me is really where it starts. It just is so juiced up.
yeah, it's interesting though. The little kid is so weird. He's good in
Yeah,
that silent part as the feral kid, but he's just a
right.
little strange.
But don't you think if you jumped into Road Warrior without seeing Mad Max, you wouldn't have any problem?
No, but I'm glad you said that because no, I think you're right. I think that's fair. But what I like about the first one too, I didn't mention this, and again, the diversity of genres that are going on. Like at one point, it felt like Deliverance. Like there's this whole wood scene where
Yeah.
his girlfriend's getting chased, and it was kind of creepy, like these woods people or whatever.
Doesn't it
Um,
start off with 2 people having sex? Isn't that the
More or
opening
less,
scene?
more or less, yeah, yeah.
Guys looking at him through a rifled
Scope on a
scope.
rifle. Yeah, but the relationship, I found this was really kind of interesting, and I thought it was well done. As you mentioned, Mel isn't on screen for maybe half the movie,
And has
and
very little
very
dialogue.
little as they all do,
Yeah.
right? In
Yes.
fact, Miller talks about it as being, he wanted it to be a silent film with sound, which I thought was a great statement, which it really, it kinda you think back to, like, Buster Keaton movies and things like that he was
Right.
talking about, but this whole, the way that they set up their relationship, again, if you count up the minutes on screen that
Mhm.
they're together, it's probably very, very minimal,
Yes.
but when it comes to her demise and his kid gets killed, I felt that, like, I was invested in
Right.
that relationship, even though it was just a short time that was on
Right.
screen, which
Right.
is kinda hard to do, because
And
we've talked about that before.
back then, you just don't kill a kid. like
Mm-mm.
the last Halloween movie. They were
Right.
killing everyone.
Oh,
Didn't
yeah.
you know, in the
Right.
original all of the original Halloween movies,
Yeah.
1 through 8,
Mhm.
kids were off limits. You know,
Oh,
they were
yeah, yeah,
trick or
yeah.
treating all
Sure.
over the place, so it would have been easy to slice up a couple of kids,
Yeah,
but
and
not
again,
until these
it
recent
it's
ones.
very graphic. I mean, there's,
Yeah,
and it is one of those films where, like, no, she's not gonna get out okay. She's not gonna be okay. Like, they're gonna kill her. They're gonna chop his head off. It is very violent too, so
right, like, his
not for the
wife
faint of heart.
survives the accident, and the doctor is telling
Yeah.
a nurse or
Sh
somebody.
She's gonna succumb to her injuries, though.
Right, and
Yeah.
he's right there listening.
Like, when he goes to see, Jim Goose, his partner, after
Yeah,
he gets burned
he
alive,
gets
which I
torched.
thought was a bit of a metaphor, maybe, like he's being consumed by the petrol that they're warring
Could
over,
be,
and he's consumed. Anyways,
wouldn't be surprised.
yeah, not to go down that, on a tangent there, but when he discovers him in the hospital, it was
Yeah,
like Pulp Fiction moment, like he's peeling the
yeah.
sheet back and his face lights up, and again, some fantastic directing, and the cinematography by David Egby is just amazing. So I really
Did he
liked
do
it.
the second one?
No, I
'Cause
don't think so. No,
they both had such a similar
no, he
look
didn't.
to it.
In fact, I'll tell you who did it. Dean Semler was the
Okay.
cinematographer on the second one. Um, I was
Now,
thinking it was
one thing I did wanna bring up about Fury Road, because it relates
yeah.
to Miller, is
Mhm.
everybody's probably read or heard about how, um, Charlize Theron and Tom Hardy didn't get along.
Oh,
In
yeah, you've
fact,
talked about that on the set before,
right,
on
and
the set, on the podcast.
he would not speak to her,
Mhm.
and he would stay in his trailer
He's in
until
character. He's going method,
well
that's all.
there's rumors, or not rumors, but there's people writing about Anna Taylor-Joy making some
Anya?
comments.
Yeah.
Is it Anya?
I
I thought it
think
was
so. I don't anyways.
there's, quotes from her talking about toxicity and the environment, and the thought is maybe Miller is the toxic person in this relationship causing.
Really?
Yeah, like I
Hmm.
said to you, "Look, you're in the Australian desert for 30 days filming with sand blowing every which way. I wouldn't be in a good mood either. I
Yeah.
don't know how chippy I would be to talk to
Mhm.
I'd stay in the trailer till they said action too."
It is Anya, by the way.
It
Yeah.
is Anya. Okay, so I just wonder if George Miller,
I don't
and
know.
it'll be
I don't
interesting
know,
because
George.
the early word, because this has already been screened by critics, and the
Mhm.
early word is that it's very good.
Well, he wrote and directed this one,
Yes.
Furiosa. So,
Yes.
I think he co-wrote one of the other ones
And he
too, but
said there's another Mad Max
well,
coming,
the original.
but
Oh,
we
right.
don't know if
Yes, I did hear
it's
that.
gonna be Hardy, or I don't know if the 2 of them can coexist.
I don't know. It's interesting, you talk about Furiosa because it just occurred to me, like, this is, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, and so
Right.
the first thing that went through my head was Solo, a Star Wars story.
Yeah.
Is this gonna go the way of that? I mean, this is a well, it's an equally not equally, I'm not gonna compare this to Star Wars, certainly. We'll get all kinds of flaming on it on in social media,
Well, it
whatever.
depends if you
But
pick
it's a
one of
it's
the
a
original
oh, there yeah,
trilogies.
there you go. You've got the
Yeah.
poster up there. But it just, stuck out to me thinking, like, and it makes me think of the world building that Miller has
Mhm.
done with this whole franchise is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, like, when we did the first look of Furiosa, I was like, "Is she a character that we should know from one of the other films?" And no, she
Right.
wasn't.
And we even speculated when we did the first look that there was a young boy, like, is that a young
Right.
Max? Which
Which it
y
couldn't have been because
with the timeline,
exactly.
which interesting point there too is Miller. I saw this interview with him and he was asked about Max, right? Because um he said he knows where he is at any point in the story,
Mhm.
and he talked, and then it got him talking a lot about
Storyboards everything.
it. Well, and it got him talking a lot about the again, the world building,
Mhm.
and needing to know the backstories of even the most ancillary characters.
Yeah.
Right? And just so I don't know, the attention to detail I just find pretty phenomenal. Last thing I'm going to say about the production, which I thought was an interesting thing, is the lenses that Miller used on Mad Max, as far as
Mhm.
I understand, he had got from lenses that were left behind or
Discarded.
given away or whatever
Mhm.
by Sam Peckinpah,
Wow.
Wild Bunch and so many other
Oh,
films.
yeah.
And, because it was, this anamorphic widescreen,
Right.
um, so the look, is just spectacular. You've got, like you said, these really tight scenes. I mean, the tension was nonstop throughout the film, just like the second one. It just
Yeah.
builds and builds and
I
builds.
felt the second one was that. I didn't feel that in the first one.
So you like, you're in Camp Humongous, not Camp Toe Cutter. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, like, to me, if I would recommend this, I would say skip the first one, get right into
No,
the
I wouldn't
good
say that.
stuff.
Nah, I'd
I
say
don't think there's anything in the first one that they
you've
don't
got to.
cover in the second.
Yeah, but you gotta be a completist when like, you've gotta just see, maybe there's Easter eggs, maybe there's just other sort of things and influences, little bits that you pick up
Yeah.
on that you may not
I'll
have
be
seen.
curious. I hope people will comment on it because I know there's
Oh, yeah, let's
diehard
let's hear from the diehards,
the
absolutely.
diehard fans who I know Furiosa will open big
Mhm.
because of Fury Road. I
Yeah,
mean,
and it
that did so well.
and it does look good, and I'm gonna get through Thunderdome, and I'm gonna watch Fury Road again,
Yeah.
and then I'm gonna check out Furiosa,
I
so.
wish I had the digital or the chrome, the black and chrome edition
Oh, yeah.
because you could see it a little differently, but,
Mhm.
it looks really good in black and white. It works
Yeah,
quite well.
yeah.
But I'm not saying it's a bad movie, but I don't think it's a necessary movie.
Mhm.
That's my take.
I do because it's the first one in the franchise, and it will always be.
But
So,
see, to
you gotta give it
me,
up.
because the first one just didn't get a release like it probably should have, Road
Yeah, but
War is really like the
but
first one
it
to
it
me.
there was no way it could on the budget that it was, and they couldn't have known how successful it was gonna be, again, compared to what they were working with as far
Mhm.
as money, and then you've got all of these pretty, you know, not so well-known actors,
Right.
certainly not in the States,
I mean, the big draw
including Mel.
right, right. This was his first film. He was 23.
One of
He
my favorite, Mel Gibson movies came out just after this, Attack Force Z. You've heard me talk about that before, which
Yeah,
I have on digital. They finally released it on digital, and,
I don't
it's
have
a
it.
it's a great film, great film.
Yeah. Is it when is that, as far as when was it released?
Like 1982, I think it came
Oh,
out.
so it was one of his early
It was, yeah. Yeah,
films.
yeah.
Okay. Probably right after Road Warrior.
Yes. Yeah, right around that same time, I guess, yeah, it would've
Yeah,
been, yeah,
because
81, 82, right.
that made him a star, and for the people who didn't jump on the Mel
Mhm.
bandwagon, Lethal Weapon made him a mega star,
Yeah.
and then he kind of undid it by getting a little too intoxicated one night or
Well, it
2
was
nights.
probably, m Attack Force Z might have been a film that he had done, and then he
Mhm.
was getting popularity, and then they pushed it out, although
Yeah.
Sam Neill was in it, and, it's
Mhm.
a great film. It's a good
From
Sunday.
Jurassic Park,
Yeah,
right?
it's a good
Sam
Sunday
Neill.
sleeper. Yeah, Sam Neill.
Yeah.
Anything else to say about Mad Max before we wrap this up? It's been a
No,
good
I
conversation.
looking forward to the new one,
Yeah,
and I will like you, I'll watch Fury Road
yeah.
again. Now, the nice thing, the first 2 are 90 minutes,
Mhm.
and then we get into, like Thunderdome, I think would have been better received if it was shorter. there was some extras because Tina Turner was in it,
Yeah, man, she
and
looked
she
good,
was a
yeah.
big deal at the time.
Huge,
And for her to
huge.
cross over into movies, it was
Yeah.
really a
She
treat.
looked she looked phenomenal too
Oh, yeah.
in that role. It, yeah, I'll watch it. I'll get through it,
Yeah.
I'm invested now, so
And again, if you pick up if you go to rogerebert.com and read
mhm,
his review,
mhm.
it's very, very flattering,
Yeah,
which I was
yeah,
surprised.
yeah, yeah, I'll check it out. Well, there you go, folks. Mad Max, the original Mad
Right.
Max,
To
1979,
get you ready
1980,
for
depending on where
the
you
next
were.
one. What do you think? Do you think Tom Hardy will ever come back?
I don't know. I would, I love Tom Hardy as most people do, so I'll be down for that. I'd like to see Mel come back in some capacity.
Yeah,
George says he doesn't, at least right now, he doesn't see Max in that, as an older, because
right.
you see that he's referenced like Unforgiven and characters
Yes.
like that, right? One last go,
Right.
but he doesn't seem
But even if they made
have a
him
story.
an ancillary character,
Yeah. I don't
you
think
know,
Max would do I don't think Max. I don't think Mel would go for that though, to be
maybe
honest with you.
not. And
You know.
um
And he gave Hardy his blessing. I mean, Hardy reached out to Mel and they had to sit down before he filmed Fury Road because he felt that was
yeah.
the respectful thing to do when you're taking on a
Yeah,
character.
Charlize Theron wasn't real thrilled that he went younger with Furiosa. I think she wanted to do the role
Mm.
and do the backstory.
I don't know. Anya looks pretty cool as this
Yeah.
character, so I'm down for it.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're gonna wrap this one up. It's
Yep.
Mad Max, folks. If you haven't seen it, like me, go check it out and let us know what you think in the comments. We want to hear from, especially the diehard Mad Max
Yeah.
fans.
Yeah, let me have it. Bring it
Yeah,
on.
well, I'm sure it'll be evenly. Some people are
Yeah,
just
we'll see.
I just didn't expect to have such a box office budget beef at the beginning, but
I know.
it was a box office
Maybe we
throwdown.
can, like, cut that down a little bit.
No, I think it makes for good podcasting. All right, that's going to do it for another episode of the Yo Brother Podcast. I've been your host, Dan Smith. Alongside me, as always, my brother from the same mother, Mike Smith, and we will see you next time.
Bye, everyone.